Okay, guys, in Grimerica tonight, we're going to be chatting with John Herlosky about all sorts of fun stuff. Jesus. But first, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm excited for tonight. We've talked about
We won't be talking about Jesus, I don't think.
no, we won't be. Well, you never know; he might come up. But we've talked about CIA's Project Stargate, and we've had people from the Monroe Institute on before. So this topic will be somewhat familiar to people, but I think we're going to hear a different take on it. We've got John Herlosky here, who's written a book called A Sorcerer's Apprentice, and it's a skeptic's journey into the CIA's Project Stargate. So it should be pretty interesting to hear his take. He's had a real interesting background. He's worked for a couple large police departments. He's been trained in SWAT tactics as a designated marksman. He sounds like a dangerous dude. But he's also considered an expert in the field of human performance technology. So I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. And he's the co-director and co-founder of a nonprofit think tank called the Institute of Evolutionary Technologies, as well as a co-director of Project Trojan Warrior 2, which is a mind-body integration training program. So sounds like he's coming from some kind of high tech and some interesting training, and then he gets involved in this Project Stargate. So we're interested to hear all about that. So without further ado, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. Yeah, we're looking forward to this. So I guess, people have heard about Stargate quite a bit. It's been, ever since it sort of unofficially or officially got shut down, whatever you believe on that front, people have sort of heard about it, and remote viewing is being trained, all over North America now in people's church basements and community centers. So, but maybe just get you to start by summarizing what Project Stargate is, I guess, and then maybe we'll get into the backstory.
You think everyone knows what remote viewing is?
I
think so.
It's getting pretty common.
Should
Yeah.
pretty know. If they don't know, they're new.
But we'll get John to explain anyways.
Sounds like a plan.
So yeah, tell us about Project Stargate.
Well, back
summary anyways.
Summary anyways?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically what it was a groundbreaking program that was initiated by the CIA to use people who were trained in a scientifically validated form of ESP, and to use that to spy on the Soviet Union, China. They also used it against the drug lords as well.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yes.
And that ran for a couple decades, wasn't it?
Actually, a little over 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So you got to figure that if it ran that long under the scrutiny of various congressional committees, it had to be a real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Mind you, they were peeking into the drug lords, so maybe they were just, funding it that way.
That's an interesting thought.
We'll save that for later. So,
Okay.
so that was in 25 years. So when did you enter the program? Like, how did that happen?
Well, the program actually ended in 1995.
Oh, that's when it was. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And in late 1997, I happened to read a book by David Morehouse by the name of Psychic Warrior.
Oh, my dad had that book. I found it actually as an audiobook after he passed away, and I actually listened to the audiobook. Yeah, interesting.
Very interesting. And the most interesting thing about the book was the fact, not so much the fact that the CIA was involved in psychic espionage, with a capital ESP, if you will. But the fact that they took a special operations soldier, a company commander in the Rangers, and trained him in the use of ESP. That was the part that really intrigued me. I mean, how can you teach someone ESP? So I bought the book and I read it in a single sitting. And it just blew me away. I had never heard of any such a technology before. So I started reading up as much as I could, and I tried to get a hold of Dr. Morehouse, but at the time he was overseas. But in 1999, the spring of 1999, I happened to see a notice at UCLA that he was going to be there to teach a beginning and intermediate course in controlled remote viewing,
Hmm.
CRV. So I signed up for it right away. And that's how I got into this particular um, program.
Hmm. So before that, were you doing those what was I read, like the human performance technology type stuff, like and were you into your physical kind of combat stuff like the martial arts and all that? So it must have been hard if you were down that path. It must have been hard to realize that, wow, okay, like we can actually do more with uh psychic abilities or the
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, I was pretty much a skeptic. When we were involved in Trojan Warrior 2, this was a program that was originally classified and it was run by the U.S. Army for their Special Forces people.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was declassified in 1990, I had heard about the program after reading a book by one of its trainers, Dr. Richard Straussy Heckler. And I contacted him, and he thought it would be a great idea to use this particular technology for law enforcement to adapt it. Because this was right about the time that LAPD had the Rodney King incident.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we both felt that this type of a program would work out really well for a police department.
Hmm.
And while we were researching different technologies to put in the program, I had come across remote viewing, but being a skeptic and being one of those people who had, number one, never had a psychic experience in my life. You know, I haven't seen a ghost or a UFO, and as far as I know, Elvis is still dead. You know, I had never really had much of an interest in that particular technology. It wasn't until I read Dave's book that it really started to intrigue me. And it was because of the reason that they actually train people to do this that I got interested in it.
Right. Huh. So I kind of have a couple different questions. I'm not sure which angle to go on right now. I guess I want to talk about the time when you took the course. So the book obviously kind of opened you up to the possibility. But was there a time during your training when you really realized that it was real, or did you still have some reservations in the back of your head, going, "Oh, I don't know if this is really possible"? Like, was there a moment when you realized, "Wow, this is true"?
That eureka moment.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Besides the book.
Um, I would say that I always had reservations about the particular technology pretty much the entire time that I was with Morehouse learning this technology,
Mm-hmm.
because it just seems so outrageous that from two sets of four numbers that were randomly chosen, you could actually go to a place and bring back information on that place, even though it was distant in space and time in some cases.
Yeah.
It was just so difficult to get your head wrapped around that type of a concept. But I think the point where I realized that there was really something to this was in Dave's second class, his advanced class called Extended Remote Viewing. And we had been sent against um, the Mars Sojourner rover at, at the Twin Peaks area of Mars. And I had had an experience called a bilocation. And a bilocation is where you identify so strongly with your target site that you begin to actually physically experience symptoms that you would if you were actually at the target site.
Wow.
And because it was so real, I mean, it was as if I was actually there. I mean, it was such a mind-bending experience because the clarity with which I was able to see was basically the same as you and I see every day. It was that clear an experience. And although it, when you are in this particular state, you cycle up and down through it. So sometimes it blurs out and then comes back again. Because it's actually very much a chore to try and stay in the zone area.
Yeah.
When you are actually in the zone area, it is absolutely amazing.
Now, was that the one on, did you say it was on Mars when you guys were remote viewing Mars?
Yes, that was the target. The target was the Mars Sojourner rover.
Wow.
Was President Obama there?
I looked, but I didn't see it.
Can you describe a little bit about what you did see?
It's funny because when we were given the target coordinates, Dave said that this was going to be a very interesting target, that we should relax and enjoy the experience. So when I dropped into the target area, I looked around and it was this relatively flat plain, and there were just rocks, anywhere from pebbles all the way up to fist-sized rocks that were strewn all the way as far as I could see out to the horizon. And there were, as I was looking out to the horizon, there were these two small hills out there, and there was virtually nothing else. I mean, it was like a desert tableau. At first, I was thinking that I was actually in Death Valley, that was the target. But one of the things that I experienced, because at the time I was undergoing a bilocation, was the fact that it felt like it was getting really hard to breathe. I felt short of breath there.
Interesting.
And it was very uncomfortable, actually. I mean, I wanted to try to breathe more in, because I felt like I was short of breath when I was there. And another thing that started to become noticeable to me was the fact that if I tilted my head up and I looked up in the sky, you would see the sky went dark. It actually went black and you could see stars. But when I looked down towards the horizon, the black gave way to like this salmon-colored sky. And it was just really strange. I mean, the horizon looked somewhat foreshortened, as if it wasn't like if looking out towards the two hills, I was looking up, and then at the point where the two hills peaked, there was like a big cliff on the other side, right? And I couldn't see the valley below or whatever. It just seemed like it was really foreshortened. And as I was contemplating this, I heard this high-pitched sound, and I saw what I thought was a dust devil go whirling by. And the interesting thing was that I could see these, well, it looked like electrical sparks or fireflies that were inside the vortex. And it was all surreal. And I was thinking to myself, well, if Dave said this was a really interesting target, why is it all I'm looking at is just this big rock garden? I mean, where's the interest? So I started turning around and looking, and I didn't see anything. And then I just, for the hell of it, looked down at my feet, and there, right at my feet, was this rectangular shaped panel. And it was this bluish red color, and it had electronic wires crisscrossing it. And I was thinking to myself, well, whoa, what's this? So I started to step back to see what was there, to get a better look at it. And right at that time, of course, my friend, who happened to be adjacent to me doing the same target, fell asleep, which is not unusual when you are doing an extended remote viewing session, because you're actually in a very, very deep hypnagogic state, which is right on the edge of dreams.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual for a viewer to cycle down, fall asleep for a bit, then come back up. Well, he had fallen asleep, but unfortunately, he started to snore. And this big snort came through, and it yanked me back from where I was to the room that all of us were in. And the only way I can explain the sensation was as if you were on one end of a stretched out rubber band and they let go one of the ends and you get snapped back that fast. And I had like this vertigo going because it was such a dizzying sensation. Well, I tried to get back down to the target again, but the time allotted for that particular session was already up. So I drew my session sketches and wrote down my summary and left it at that. But the interesting thing was, you're thinking, well, God, this was a boring session up until the point when Dave put the feedback up on the viewer, the overhead viewer, and the target was, the Mars Sojourner rover on Mars. And I mean, I had shown my sketches before he had shown the feedback to a couple of my friends who were taking the course with me. And then, I showed them what I had, and I was telling them, I don't think I was anywhere. I think I was just dreaming. Well, of course, I wasn't dreaming at all. I had described the area absolutely perfectly.
Wow.
In fact, if you looked at the view that was of the rover and the expanse behind it that went out to the horizon, I had described it almost exactly.
So that panel was the rover. Probably.
Yeah. It was the solar cell that was up on top of the rover. It's a flat rectangular shaped panel that actually does appear blue. The reason it looked reddish blue to me was, of course, the atmosphere of Mars tends to give you a reddish tint to everything there.
So
it appeared bluish red to me.
Is it like riding a bike, would you say? Or is it something that if you don't use it, you lose it?
That's interesting. That's actually a good question. You never lose the ability. Okay, your psychic antenna, so to speak, are always up, and sometimes you'll pick up impressions, like during the day, but your ability to successfully or accurately draw and bring back information does deteriorate if you don't practice. So most of the remote viewers out there that use this on a day, that use this, let's say on a continuing basis, practice their craft, because you can lose your accuracy level.
What do you think about the people that had that similar experience? Or not the people, but there was one of the famous remote viewers was seeing the moon or the dark side of the moon, or had an encounter where he actually had spotted I think entities spotted him kind of in his alternate dimensional experience kind of.
See, being a skeptic, it was hard enough to wrap my head around the idea that remote viewing was real. I mean, I don't want to dismiss experiences like that, because I did have something similar to that happen to me later on in Dave's classes.
Right.
But that's it's just so far beyond what I'm really used to that I'm really uncomfortable with that. I mean, it was their experience. I understand they had that experience, and I believe that what they experienced was real for them. It's just hard for me to understand something like that.
Is it the part where he would be noticed by some other entity that's hard for you to accept, or just that he saw, or what he saw up there?
Well, it's what he saw up there. I'm one of those skeptics that believe that we haven't been visited by alien advanced technology.
Uh-huh.
That's simply my opinion. I don't believe we have, because I haven't seen enough evidence of it.
Right.
And when you understand the physics and technology necessary to travel between stars and to realize just how far apart stars really are, you begin to realize that searching for another civilization at our level of technology becomes, I mean, searching for a needle in a haystack the size of the state of California would be easy in comparison.
Yeah. Via a spaceship, not your consciousness, obviously.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. But, I've had some absolutely amazing experiences on that particular level where it wasn't the moon that I was at, but rather far out in deep space,
Hmm.
where I had experiences like that all I can say is, well, if I was able to accurately describe the Sojourner rover on Mars to that extent, then you have to give my experience that I had or they had with a target that was off planet where feedback isn't really possible. You still have to give it some credence because
It
the technology used was exactly the same.
Hmm.
is what about time? Is time an issue? Like, can you only look at what's happening now? Can you
Oh,
look, is there a limit on how far back or how far forward you can go if it's possible at all?
as far as we have been able to ascertain, there are no limits in space or time. You can access the past just as easily as you can the present. Accessing the future, yes, it is possible, but we still don't quite understand what that means. I mean, if you're able to look into the future, and let's say we saw 9/11, and I use that because I accidentally did have an experience where I was privy to that particular experience 96 hours before it actually happened, although I didn't realize it at the time. It
Of course, yeah.
wasn't until afterwards that I realized where the connection lay. But let's say, you get into ideas where, well, if you know what's going to happen and you take steps to make sure that it doesn't happen and it doesn't happen, did what you see actually was part of the future?
Yeah. Or was it
You
just a
know what I mean?
possibility? Or
This possibility. I mean, you get into
Only
really,
possibilities.
yes, you get into some really mind bending thoughts when you start playing with the future like that.
yeah, yeah. See, my conspiratorial mind goes to like the past and what if the CIA had these people doing this and they realized that it's somewhat reliable? Like, wouldn't you have people going back to those important
Wait, you're not
times in the past?
time traveling, you're only looking.
Well, no, you
You
go
can't
back.
interact.
Well, you can read books and like read important documents. Like you could find the true history of things, right? Whether it's about the occult or certain things like that would give
I don't
them
know. Can
power,
you like
right?
open a book? Can you? No, you can only look at the book closed on the counter, I imagine, right?
Well, there are some limitations to remote viewing. It's primarily a right brained aspect, so that when you are viewing something, um, you tend to see things as they are, but viewing things like numbers and letters and written stuff is much more difficult. It can be done, and it has been, and it has happened. Remote viewers have actually accessed written documents inside of safes and been able to decipher some of the writing in there.
Hmm.
But it's not usual, and it is difficult, but it is possible.
Huh.
As for going back into the past, yes, it's very easy. As a matter of fact, it's relatively routine to a remote viewer. Now, going into the future, yes, but because of the fact it is in the future, you have to wonder exactly if you are seeing things that are really going to happen, and there's no way you can change them, which means, you know, are we predestined? Or, can you change the future if you have future knowledge of it? And I'll
Wow.
give
Yeah.
and I'll give you an example. Um, Paul Smith, one of the original military remote viewers, when he was at the Fort Meade Stargate unit one day, he had been tasked by one of the project managers on what is called an open search outward. And in an open search outward, you get coordinates to a target, but the target is like a wild card. It isn't assigned to any particular target.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply like a shotgun blast into the matrix to see what's out there, what's interesting, what's going to happen in the future. Well, the project manager was looking for something UFO related, but Paul described a warship that had been hit by a missile which exploded and caused death and destruction. And so they wrote up everything. They wrote up the session as an actual possibility that might happen in the near future, so that the warning would go out to the US Navy that, there are possibilities out there that might mean that you may be attacked in the next 48 hours or so. Well, it was sent up the chain of command, but they don't know whether it was listened to or not. But 48 hours after Paul had done the actual viewing, the USS Stark in the Gulf of Sidra was hit by a missile fired by an Iranian warplane. And Paul's description of what happened virtually matched exactly what happened on that ship.
That'll learn you. Wow.
Yeah. That was 48 hours into the future.
Oh.
But once again, that brings up the thought. What if they had listened? What if they had put that alert out? And the Stark, instead of being in a regular, relaxed condition too, was at general quarters. They had their radars up and running, and they had their point defense weapons ready to go. And they destroyed the missile. What then would that mean about the viewing that Paul had done? He described an explosion. If they had listened to the warning, and the Stark had fired and hit the missile and destroyed it before it hit the ship, then his description of the death and destruction on the ship would have been wrong.
Wow. Yeah, it makes you think. I wonder if it's too bad we don't have more examples of where, history is altered because of that. But I guess it's hard to prove that too, because, they...
It's unverifiable.
Well, not only that, but proven in a soft way too. Like just that if Buddy saw something happen and then you change the course and you say, well, it just never happened. So it's kind of, it's like an oxymoron or something.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because when you deal with the future, you're dealing in a situation in the unrealized. So if by seeing the future, can you change that future? Interesting thought, because it has connections then with the ideas of free will versus predetermination. Do we really have free will? Is that an illusion?
Or maybe we already had free will.
Or is everything predetermined? Is the future fixed?
Wonder if it's just like time's not linear. So we already made all those choices, or who knows? That's where shit gets crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can really bend your mind around something like this.
Yeah. When you're talking about the reading, it made me think, it makes sense, because when you're reminding me of the lucid dreaming, like one of the ways to realize that you're actually dreaming is to read something and then turn around and read it again. And it's like very hard to read something in a dream. Like it's very fluid. So it sounds similar.
There's the reason why that is, and that is because remote viewing essentially brings your unconscious up into the conscious. It's a communication between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, because your unconscious mind is connected on a very fundamental level with, creation, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. The Akashic records or whatever, however you want to label that.
We label it the Matrix.
Yeah.
okay, of all creation. But essentially, what it seems to be is that your unconscious mind has a connection with the wave function of the universe, and so all information, irrespective of time or distance, is available to your unconscious, and all you're doing is simply teaching a manner of communication between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. Now, the reason that reading letters and numbers and names and things like that is difficult is because your unconscious mind doesn't function like that. That's a left brain function. Okay, that's analytical. That's logical. Math and reading skills. That's all right. Excuse me, left brained. Whereas with your with your unconscious, it uses things like allegory. And I'll give you an example of how the unconscious mind can communicate with a remote viewer. We were given a target one day, and my good friend Sandra um, described dolphins, okay, on this target. She kept seeing dolphins for some reason. Well, the target was the Opera House in Sydney Harbor. Now, the interesting thing is that the designer who designed the Sydney Opera House actually called the structure the Dolphin. Those shell-shaped curves on there was designed to look like several dolphins surfacing through the water, the curved back. So he actually calls it the Dolphin. So you see, that's the reason why Sandra kept seeing dolphins when she went to that target, because her unconscious mind was speaking to her in allegory, so that her description of dolphins actually was spot on.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's actually, and there are a number of other uh, situations where remote viewers have had allegory, which actually describes um, parts of the target. So
I,
it's an unusual thing to happen.
I guess we shouldn't gloss over the 9/11 premonition either. Could you tell us a bit about what you saw there?
Like
Sure.
who done it?
Who done it? Yeah, there you go.
We don't have to go there.
That was actually a fluke. It was purely fortuitous. I was working with a scientist by the name of Marty Rosenblatt, and he was doing research in associative remote viewing, which is a type of remote viewing that is used for forced choice decisions, meaning you have a binary choice, either this choice or that choice. Okay, and this type of remote viewing is used to look ahead in time, and this is one of the cases where you actually do use time travel to see what's going to happen into the future. You don't actually see what's happening, but rather you assign something to, in this case, it was pictures. You'd assign a certain picture to one choice and assign a different picture to another choice. And to illustrate that, let me use what happened in this particular instance, and that was Marty was looking at stock options. He wanted to know whether a particular stock option in, what was it, 3 days hence, I think it was, were either going to um, rise or stay the same or fall. So that was the choice. Is this stock option going to go up, or is it going to stay the same or drop? So those were the two forced choices here on this particular experiment. Now, Marty had this computer program called Misty, which took two pictures from a large pool of photographs. taken of various objects and things all around the world. And the idea was the computer would choose one picture that would be shown in the future for one outcome and a different picture if the outcome was the other choice. So what you were doing is you weren't actually looking to see what the event actually was. You were going to view into the future your feedback for what actually happened. So in this case, the computer chose one picture, which was of a tree-lined path through a forest, and the other picture was the Twin Towers. Now, the computer had chosen the tree-lined path if the stock option had stayed the same or dropped, and it had chosen the picture of the Twin Towers if the stock option was going to go up. Now, this is interesting because you were shown, after you do your viewing, you write down, your description of the picture that you're going to be shown in 3 days. Okay. When you make your choice, the computer brings up both pictures. And it doesn't tell you which picture is which or what it's assigned to. It just shows you the two pictures. And you have to choose between the two pictures which one of them looks like what you are going to be shown by the computer after it's found out what that stock option does. And the computer at that time will only show you one of those two pictures based on whether or not it went up or it stayed the same or went down. So to me, I was looking at a cityscape. I was seeing buildings and bridges and water and boats and stuff like that. So the other picture of the tree-lined path had absolutely no correspondence to anything that I saw that was going to be shown to me in the future. So that's what I chose as the picture that was going to be shown to me 96 hours hence.
Wow.
Well, not only did I see the buildings and all of that, I also saw a bunch of stuff that at the time didn't make any sense to me. I saw two large spired or jagged craters that were not smooth top, they were really jagged. And I saw I thought it was snow because it was light colored, but it could have been, a lot of dust cloud or something like that. I also saw lots of dogs, and I saw what appeared to be, it looked like it was either the fuselage of an airplane or a train, like a subway train, because it was round, cylindrical, but it had windows on the side, and the front end was flat. Okay? I wrote down all of these impressions, even though, they didn't have any correspondence, I thought, at the time, to the picture I was looking at, simply because I just figured it was what we call AOL, or analytical overlay, which is simply your mind attempt to put a label on what you're seeing. So I wrote it all up, I made my choice, and didn't think anything of it. Well, on September 11th, I went back to the library where I was doing the experiment. And as I walked through the door, I thought it rather interesting that they had a TV monitor up on the librarian's desk, and it was, there was a television program going on. And I had never seen anything like that happen before in the library. Usually they try and keep things quiet. But I didn't put any credence to it. And I had gone to the library right after getting up. I had not listened to the radio or turned the TV on or anything like that. I just grabbed some coffee, something to eat, and went out the door because I wanted to see what the results were. So I sat down on at the computer console and pulled up the search engine in order to go to Marty's Misty site. And I saw a picture of what appeared to be a jetliner crashing into the side of a building. And I thought to myself, wow, they can really do really cool things nowadays with computer generated imagery. Because I wasn't reading anything. I just happened to glance at the picture. I was busily typing in into the search engine the URL for Marty's site. So I went to the site and put my passwords in and everything, and asked the computer to bring up the picture that was the proper response. Well, to my dismay, it wasn't what I saw. It was the tree-lined path, because the stock option had fallen precipitously. And I was just really chagrined. I mean, I thought to myself, God, how could I have missed this one? I had seen everything in that other picture. The picture of the tree-lined path had nothing to do with what I had seen.
Right.
Right? So I was just really dejected. I just thought to myself, man, this is going to drop my average, because we were scoring multiple trials. And it made me question once again my belief in the ability of remote viewing, because being a skeptic, that's always in the back of your mind whenever you do a remote viewing session. Am I really seeing this? Am I really doing this? And at the time, I was still had ambivalent feelings about this particular technology. So I closed the search engine out without even looking at the what was going on. I was just so dejected that I just shut it down and just got up and left. So I still didn't know what had happened. So I drove home and I threw my paperwork, because I had printed out the actual pictures of what I chose and what actually was the correct site,
Mm-hmm.
and tossed them on my desk. And I was just really pissed off at myself. So I turned the boob tube on to just kind of channel surf for a bit. And of course, the news was on every channel. It wouldn't matter where you went. And they were talking about, the situation. And I was looking at the Twin Towers, and it didn't really register with me what I was looking at. They were showing the buildings from really close up, and they were only showing one building at a time. And
Mm-hmm.
they were, the smoke coming out, and excuse me, the fire and the flames and everything. And it didn't register with me. And I'm thinking, God bless, when did this happen? And they started telling, this had happened, just happened, and this is coming to you live, and all this other stuff. And then they took a shot from the helicopter from across the river, and it almost exactly duplicated the shot, except from a higher vantage point, of the one that I had been given by the computer that I had printed out. And when they showed that to me, something clicked in my mind, and I thought, oh my God, that's the feedback picture.
Yeah.
So I immediately went over to my desk, started throwing stuff around, saying, what did I do with that shot? What did I do with that shot? And I found it, and I looked at it, and I thought, holy crap. And I looked at, because I kept the paperwork that I had written all of my notes on, and looked at it and thought, holy crap. I actually saw it back on Friday, because that's when I had done the actual original viewing of the target. And because the computer had chosen the target, at random, that happened to be the Twin Towers, I think that's part of the reason why I managed to intercept what was happening 96 hours in advance of when it actually did. And the interesting thing is that the stock actually dropped. So the correct picture was the other picture.
Yeah.
Yet this incident was so powerful in its impact on human consciousness that it intruded on my session such that I was able to see what was happening that far in advance.
That's funny because I was going to ask. It always seems like when we talk about these things, that emotion seems to play a role somehow. Like large groups of this of kind of consecutive emotion can somehow warp it or somehow have an effect that's measurable.
As very much, in fact, they actually, after reports started coming in from various remote viewers of a similar situation like this and other aspects, such as what I told you about with Paul Smith, they started what is called the Global Consciousness Project,
Yeah.
and what they did was they had um, random number generators scattered across the planet, and they tried to correlate changes in the output from random to non-random when significant global situations occurred like 9/11, and they found that there was a definite correlation between really emotional impact type events happening in the world and the change in the output of these random number generators.
Hmm.
So in the wave function of the universe, evidently these are impacts that cause ripples that travel through space and time. And remote viewers, because they have their, if you will, their foot dipped in the pool, are able to connect with what is going on. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's well said. Hmm. So, how do you feel about getting a little personal here about the current paradigm we're living in and how, we are still kind of controlled isn't the right word, but still kind of living under the thumb of the materialist dogma and the, that we're just biological robots, as some of our guests would say, and that none of this is possible and you can't measure it, so it's not true. We'll just put it in that bucket and ignore it over there. Like, how do you feel now that you've kind of, turned this corner in your life? And do you ever worry about
oh,
that? Does it concern you?
oh yeah, that's an excellent point, because that's actually the reason why I wrote the book. And you're right. Dave used to call it the unconscious of the conscious. People go through their lives in this, I don't know, state of light hypnosis.
Hmm.
And they are so focused in on their lives and their, who's paying the bills, social media, and all these other things, and closed their minds off to the real truth that's out there. The actual reality of our universe. Um, it's I agree with you completely that um, this is like a measure of control, not unlike that portrayed in the movie The Matrix, where the government controls your news and your perception of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, there's more that exists in your philosophy than what you believe in. There's a whole world out there beyond what you believe is true. And you can see that with the evolution of science. I mean, when you think back, for basically 1,000 years or more, the Earth was the center of the universe. Everything revolved around the Earth. And then, of course, um, with Galileo and with
Copernicus.
you realize, well, I guess the Earth isn't the center of the universe. We are actually revolving around the sun. But it was a mechanistic universe. I mean, Newton held sway with the idea of a clockwork universe. If you use Newton's um, uh, mechanics, Newtonian mechanics, you could predict where a planet was going to be, where a star was going to be, and everything was like a clockwork. It was like the whole universe was meshed together like a giant mechanism. And for what, several hundred years, that was the view of the universe. It was a giant mechanism, and it was the sum of its parts. And that changed abruptly in the 20th century with the development of two of the greatest physical theories in human history. the theory of relativity, and the theory of quantum mechanics.
Hmm.
And the world of Newton suddenly morphed into this other world where things are not quite what they seem. And the clockwork universe was no longer a clockwork universe. It was a universe of sublime truth to it, where particles have a schizoid existence where they can appear and reappear, light years apart in an instant, where you can only know so much about a particle, and in the act of knowing that particle, you actually change the particle.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is an entirely different universe that we inhabit now. So, the ideas of people nowadays need to start to realize that we live in an incredibly sublime and mysterious universe. So just because we don't quite understand how something works or why something works doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think it's
so,
closer to the Matrix than we think.
yeah, I mean, it's almost, and as a matter of fact, the Wachowski brothers actually chose the title to the movie based on the Matrix description for remote viewers. That's where they got that idea from.
Oh, wow.
And that's the way people act, as if they were, plugged into the Matrix. They're seeing things that the news wants you to see. They're seeing things the way the government wants you to see it. And you need to open your mind. You cannot take anything at face value. You need to make your own decisions about not only life, but how you fit into life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like the old TV show, The X-Files, where Fox Mulder used to preach all the time. The truth is out there. You got to look for it, though.
Yeah. So I seem to want to ask this to almost all our guests for some reason, but I am interested in the answers. So you've been, since you took that first course in '99, it's been, a decade and a half or whatever. Have you noticed an opening up of our consciousness and our minds? Like how do you see the last kind of decade going? You have the internet in there, and
yeah. See, that's part of the problem. People get so immersed in everyday life stuff, and with the advent of electronics that are just mind-blowing in capabilities, like smartphones, for instance, people start to tend to live their life out of their smartphone and ignoring this beautiful universe around them. And I think we have a balancing act here between technology on one hand and the philosophical aspects of the reality of life. And you need to balance the two. I mean, you really do need to make a connection with, your spiritual side. Otherwise, it atrophies. I mean, if you don't use it, you lose it.
For every 8 hours, or you could go maybe for every 48 hours of screen time, you gotta eat a gram of mushrooms.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I prefer shiitake myself.
Yeah, I struggle with that one though, because in some ways it's making us more connected, and it's almost an allegory to the Matrix. It's allowing us to have that social. I think we have an innate social desire, right? Like how you hear people about you're happiest when you have like this cohesive social group and all this, or we're actually not
company.
Yeah, and like how isolation is bad. So in some ways, the technology is helping us is connect on a level that we've never ever even thought possible before, without it being some sort of metaphysical consciousness act.
Yeah, but the good thing about that is that there is a whole universe of information available to everybody on the web. I mean, it's getting more increasingly difficult to hide the truth.
Yeah.
Because there are so many ways to find the truth out there. I mean, remote viewing is one, because you can't lie to a remote viewer. I mean, you say that, we don't have a base at Area 51. There's no way we have a base at Area 51. We don't even know what a Area 51 is. Well, tell that to a, you assign a remote viewer to that particular target, he's going to draw the whole thing. So you can't hide the truth from a remote viewer. And that's kind of like the internet in a way. It's really hard to hide the truth when there are so many things out there. If you lie about something in particular, like our government has been known to do from time to time, you're going to find the truth. I mean, and I'll give you a classic example of that comes straight from my book. And that's the situation regarding the loss of the first pilot in the first Gulf War, uh, Michael Scott Spiker. The Pentagon said that he was shot down during the first day of the war by an Iraqi MiG-25, and that he died in the crash. Well, we know for facts now, thanks to a young lady by the name of Amy Waters-Jarzynski, did the investigation into that and is chronicled in her book, An American in the Basement, and the prequel to it, the Nobody Left Behind, that this was not the truth. The truth of the matter is, Spiker was shot down, but it wasn't by the Iraqis. He was shot down by friendly fire. He was a victim of fratricide. Due to some miscommunications, he was hit by an AIM-7 missile from a Navy F-14.
Oh, wow.
That had been given the target by an AWACS aircraft, where the controller had made a mistake. It happens. It's the fog of war. But unfortunately, it was the result of it was the fact that Spiker had been shot down by one of our own people.
Early on, first day of the war. And the idea that he had died in the crash was subsequently shown to be wrong. He survived the crash. As a matter of fact, he tried to contact search and rescue on a number of occasions by leaving messages in the desert using rocks spelled out, his name and things like that. He hid for I think it was a year, if not more, with a band of Bedouins, who, unfortunately for him, were antithetical to the Hussein regime. Huh.
But unfortunately, all the interest in trying to find him at the time, because the family never thought the explanation given by the Pentagon was true. That interest kind of worked against Spiker, and he was eventually found by Saddam's forces. And the result of that was eventually the capture and subsequent death in captivity, and the massacre of the entire Bedouin tribe, men, women, and children, for hiding them.
Wow. It's frustrating because even though these things do come to light, it feels like to me that it's too late in a way, right? Like once you get that meme out there, once you get the mainstream talking about something, regardless of whether it's true or not, it's kind of already done a lot of damage.
Yeah. It's really sad because this man, put his life basically in our country, and the oft mentioned term, leave no one behind. Obviously, he was one who fell through the cracks, and he wasn't the only one. There were a number of others that fell through the cracks as well. But he's the one that I use in my book because I had a connection with that particular person. So, yeah, I mean, the government sometimes lies when they shouldn't. They should simply accept responsibility. But the problem with our government is that it's so hard to accept responsibility when you did something wrong. I mean, you've got, the Teflon responsibilities, I guess you call it, where everything slides off and everybody's pointing fingers, but nobody's accepting the responsibility for what happened. And that's unfortunate, pretty much endemic with our government.
Do you still practice remote viewing yourself? Where are you at with it now, all these years later?
Well, actually, I still work with Amy Waters Yarsinski on MIA and POW matters.
Oh, nice.
And we do, I still do remote viewing operationally. I have worked on some projects since the book, and I can't go into them because they're actually
classified.
Well, not classified.
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, I know I can trust you guys.
So
I know you'll edit it out.
Yeah, exactly. So what about the rumors that there is still a Stargate happening? It's just not in the open anymore.
That's interesting. There are a number of people, including several of the original military remote viewers, who believe that it's quite possible that they actually didn't disband the unit. They simply put it under a much deeper black program. And the reason they did that was because of the expose given by Dave Morehouse's book, Psychic Warrior.
Wow, that was the book that kind of opened it up, eh? Yeah, there's been so much out there since, but I had that book on a cassette tape.
What's that?
That Psychic Warrior book.
What's a cassette tape?
Oh yeah, Darren doesn't even know what that is. Yeah, it's the one after the 8-track.
So, is it like when you're going to remote view? Is it like a whole production to get into, or is it like if you need to, can you be doing it like 20 minutes? You know what I mean?
No,
like, does it ever come Yeah, well,
Actually, operational remote viewing, yes, it's quite a project. It's quite a process, but practice sessions or demonstration sessions is fairly straightforward. There's not that much to it. I mean, when I was at the 2006 IRVA conference, which is the International Remote Viewing Association conference that they hold every year, they actually did, for those who were not remote viewers in the audience during one of the presentations, I think it was, as a matter of fact, I think it was by Steven Schwartz, although don't quote me on that. But in any case, he gave the audience a target, and he said, "This is this. I have a target in mind. Here are the coordinates. And for those of you who aren't remote viewers, that's all right. Just simply sit back, relax, take some deep breaths, get nice and relaxed and comfortable, and just write down whatever comes up into your mind." So, the entire audience did this remote viewing session together, and there were a number of gasps of recognition when he popped the feedback pictures up 20 minutes later. The actual target was the monorail system there at one of the casinos. And there were people going, "Oh my God, look, this is what I wrote, this is what I wrote." And these were non-remote viewers. So as I said, this is a basic innate human ability. Everybody has the ability to do it.
So I've got a proposition for you, and if it's too much, you can, or if you don't have the time, of course you can opt out, and I can just edit this out. But this episode will come out in about 2.5 weeks, probably in podcast form, which is where most of our audience is.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to email you the coordinates of the studio, maybe you could, in that time, send us back a picture, and we could use it for the episode art.
Interesting thought. I would not be
adverse to that. It's not the real coordinates, though, Darren. It's not like you give them like east and west. It's just coordinates as we would make up coordinates. Like, just how many numbers is it again?
I usually use 2 sets of 4 numbers.
2 sets of 4 numbers. So we would both give them a set of numbers with our intention on the studio. It wouldn't be the actual coordinates.
Oh, right. You'll have to show me how to do that.
Okay.
But remember that remote viewing is driven by intention. So whoever makes up those numbers, how you would do it is simply write down the intention that the viewer is going to be viewing the outside of the studio, or that the studio is the target, and or whatever you desire to be the target. Doesn't have to be, it could be virtually anything, and put that, assign the numbers to it with the idea that, yes, this is what I want him to view, and then send me the coordinates.
Okay, cool. We'll do that. Yeah,
Yeah, sweet.
and then we'll put it out we'll put it out as the episode art.
Sure.
And then maybe I'm gonna test your ability too, Graham. We should start training you.
I've already taken a couple courses. It's really hard.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I can't even meditate or sit still.
You know what might be even more interesting, though? If I gave you guys coordinates to a target of my choosing.
Okay.
Have you do it. You see, people, if I do it, it's what we call the dog and pony show. As a matter of fact, most of the remote viewers don't usually do this anymore, simply because people will go, well, they cheated, or they looked up the target, or I think it comes all sorts of different excuses.
Oh, totally.
Right. So the remote viewers, by and large, unless it's under certain controlled circumstances, don't usually do that type of thing anymore, simply because it's
fodder for the skeptics.
Yeah,
it's really, we're not trying to prove anything here. We would just do it for fun. Yeah.
But doing it the way I suggest, where I'm not doing the viewing, it's you guys are doing the viewing, who are not remote viewers. But this will show that, everybody has this ability. Anybody can do this. And two people who are not trained in remote viewing, who got these coordinates and simply sat back in their chair, closed their eyes, maybe turned the light down a little bit, and just, wrote down whatever happened to pop up in their minds, and see how close you get.
That sounds great. Yeah.
I'm up for the challenge.
I think you would be very surprised.
So I just think and draw a picture?
I'm going to think of a target for you, and I'm going to give you the coordinates.
And then you don't think and draw a picture, Darren. I think you want to try and get your brain out of the way, right? And really get into that theta state that we talk about in here, and almost be like half asleep, and then focus on the coordinates, and then probably.
And then we'll split we'll combine them both into one picture, use that as the episode art, and people can guess whose is whose.
Right on.
I have the target, and I have the coordinates for you.
I'm ready to.
Are you going to give them to us now, or do you want to email them? Okay.
I'll give it to you right now.
Okay, sure.
The coordinates for your target are 2105 6611.
All right.
Target is to be described in present time.
Okay.
Okay. This will preclude you from, gliding up and down the timeline, if you will.
Yeah.
Existence.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. So is this time sensitive, or can we do it at our own leisure?
Do it at your leisure, and then what I want you to do is to just simply, write down your impressions, sketches, any thoughts that come to mind on the target, and then when you are ready for your feedback, let me know, and I'll email you the target.
Great.
Perfect. And I think we got a couple of people in the chat room asking if the listeners can do it too. I suppose they could, and they could just they can just email them to us.
Yeah, actually they could.
And I don't think we don't need to send them all to John. If you want, we could, but it could be a bit much.
Yeah, that way. Besides, I would rather you guys see, because I already know what you're going to do.
Okay. See. So let's, you should put those numbers in the chat room then, Darren, if you don't mind. That's 2105-6611.
And I'll put them in the show notes as well for
Right.
people listening to the podcast.
All right.
Yeah, invite all of your listeners to write down their impressions. All you have to do is simply relax, take some deep breaths, put everything out of your mind. Just put aside the smartphone, put aside the TV.
Your day.
Yeah, put aside the computers, all that stuff. Just sit back and just relax and just start a dialogue with your unconscious and see what bubbles up. I think you will be, as well as your listeners, will be very surprised.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. That's good. Thanks.
Okay, take about 15 minutes. That's all you really need to do. 15, 20 minutes or so. That's, it's a nice way to put everything aside for that short period of time and just sit and relax for a moment and get comfortable and see what bubbles up. I have a really good target for you too. I think.
Okay. So that's good. We'll do that.
Maybe it's our studio.
No, you can't start guessing now.
Before we wrap it up, John, it's been a great chat. Do you have anything you want to let any of our listeners know? Anything you want to let them know, or where they can track you down?
Actually, you can track me down at www.asorcerersapprentice.com. That's my blog, and you can contact me through my email at johnherlosky@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. You're not on the Twitter or the Facebook or any of those fun things?
No, actually, I am on Facebook. You're more than welcome to friend me. I answer everybody's emails. I will answer as many questions as I possibly can. I friend easily.
Nice.
Yeah, well, it's been a fantastic time. I can't wait to get down to this little experiment. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see what the listeners send in. And thanks.
That's exactly the way you should approach it too. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, totally. That's what it's all about. In the meantime, we'll open up some minds and we'll explore the infinite possibilities.
Yeah, we encourage everyone to check out the book.
Yes.
Yeah,
You got the book in front of you there, Graham?
Yeah, you bet. It's A Sorcerer's Apprentice, a Skeptic's Journey into the CIA's Project Stargate. Thanks so much, John. It's been great.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed my time here with you today.
Excellent. We'll forward you a copy when it's out.
Oh, I'd love it. I'll put it on my website.